Hi, and welcome to Matt Holman Talks Mental Health, the podcast where I have the wonderful opportunity to catch up with friends of mine who I've known over many years of different parts of my career and my life. Today, I am so happy to talk mental health with Alice Linley-Munro, somebody that I first came across a couple of years ago. I'll give a proper introduction in a second. Welcome, Alice.
Thanks, Matt.
So, as I always do on these podcasts, I'll introduce Alice from how I see Alice, how I know Alice, and then I'll ask you to do your introduction as well. So, we met a couple of years ago at a conference. I think that was the first time we'd ever sort of come across each other in the travel wellbeing world. That's where we first met. And the conference was very much focused on business travel wellbeing, which is an area that I'm very passionate about. And I know Alice is too. And so we had commonality. We were both from an industry that was, thriving at the time. Of course, there's big changes and dramatic changes that have happened this year. And we stayed in touch. And I actually ended up doing some work with the company that Alice is working for, delivering some mental health sessions, some keynotes. One of the sessions around being a 24-hour human, which I know Alice is a big fan of, which I absolutely love. She's spoken about before as well on another podcast. And it's just been fantastic. So as always, with all of these podcast recordings that I'm so lucky to be doing, I just get the chance to have a chat. So Alice, welcome. Lovely
Thanks.
to see you.
Lovely to see you virtually.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. Give me the chance to talk about my mental health journey.
Yes.
As wild and wonderful as it has been. Where would you like me to start? At the beginning?
So let's start with where you are right now in terms of what you do. So your job, what your role is, and a little bit about that, your experience of work, and then we'll go into your mental health chat. So what's going on, what you've been through. Yeah.
Perfect. So I work for, I'm a travel manager for an emergency response organisation. So we do a lot of business as usual travel, but we also do the kind of emergency, immediately out the door type travel, which can be quite pressured. It's quite a pressure cooker environment when the call comes in and everybody has to get out the door. So that can take a bit of a toll on people's mental health and kind of physical health. You're working long hours. But I'm really lucky that the company I work for are really invested in physical and mental health. And particularly over the course of this year have kind of made leaps and bounds towards looking after people and kind of keeping us supported and thinking about how each person responds differently to situations. So there's no kind of cookie cutter response to a stressor or a life event or whatever. So it's been an interesting journey with them. I fell into it completely by mistake. I was only supposed to be there 8 weeks on reception, and it will be 10 years next year, next April. So I think I wasn't working in travel before. I completely fell into it. So I think I've found my home, and I'm happy to be part of the company, really.
Fabulous. And I'm sure they love you to pieces as well, and they're happy to have you there as well. I know they are. So that's fantastic. So really interesting evolution of your career as well there. So starting on the reception to where you are now and responsible for sort of setting the program around how people travel, what they do and how they do it.
Yeah, and I had no idea about travel beforehand. The travel coordinator moved jobs and they said, do you want to cover the job for a little while? And I was like, yeah. I came from working in university admissions. And before that, I worked for P&O Cruises, doing sort of fleet training and things like that. So I never really knew what I wanted to do. And I was living under the weight of expectation from family members of being a teacher or being a journalist or doing something, they all had their own idea of what I should be doing. And I struggled with that for a long time. And thankfully travel came along, and now they're happy, I'm happy. It's all worked out quite nicely, really.
Brilliant. Well, that's fantastic, and long may it continue, of course. And we hope this industry bounces back at some point. And I know with yours, of course, it hasn't really stopped as much. You've still been traveling. You've still been out there and
yeah, we have. And I was talking to my colleague this morning actually, and saying that it's so different now, because it used to be when the person got to their hotel the other end, that was all fine, and we knew, as long as there weren't any initial problems, and obviously we kept an eye on them. But at the moment, because the regulations are changing so much, we're not breathing out at home, and they've had their day 5 test, and we know that they're negative and that everything's fine. So it kind of increases that length of stress that and length of concern, and you're spinning plates. So you've got the person who's going out and this person that's coming back and this person's. So it's been pretty tricky, but we're getting there with it.
Great.
Trying to keep up with it. So
Brilliant. Well, I'm sure there's a million threads of conversations we can have around travel, but this is a conversation about your experience.
Talk about mental health.
Yeah, we're here to talk about, but you know what? It's all relative. It's all relevant, isn't it, to this conversation?
Yeah.
So your journey, so 10 years in this organization, and lots of things have been going on, of course, in terms of the developmental side for yourself. Let's talk about your experience and your journey of mental health, because that's what this is about. I want to learn about you. The listeners of this really want to know who Alice is, and how you have functioned over your life with your mental health.
Yeah, so officially my mental health journey started when I was 16. We sadly lost my mum very suddenly, completely unexpectedly, and I was sent for some counselling. But growing up in a tiny village, there aren't many counsellors available, so the counsellor that I was assigned was one of my mum's best friends.
Oh no.
Also the mother of a kid that was in my year at school, so it wasn't really very successful because I didn't feel that it was perhaps the most neutral of territories. And then about 3 or 4 months after my mum died, my dad got really ill, and we were kind of prepared that he perhaps wasn't going to be around for much longer. So I was 16 and my older brother was 17 and a half. And it just kind of threw the world pulled the rug out from underneath us completely, because my dad worked abroad the whole time we were growing up. So we didn't really have that much time with him. And suddenly he was our sole carer, but he was also ill. So I took a gap year after my GCSEs, after my mum died. I took a year off. And I was thinking today, I don't actually remember what I did with that year. I can't remember anything about it. And then I went to college to do A-levels because it was expected that I would go to university. And that was an interesting couple of years. I remember my sixth form head, really lovely guy, but I think he'd be horrified if he knew now, if I reminded him what he said. I used to refer to my dad and my brother as the boys. So I'd say, I've got to go shopping for the boys, or I've got to cook for the boys. And he said to me, if something doesn't change, you're going to have a mental breakdown by the time you're 21.
Really?
I was like, okay. So went off to university, and that's when the wheels really started to come off. My third day at university, went to register with the GP, and it was supposed to just be a quick 10-minute registration appointment, and she put me on Prozac, and I've been on antidepressants ever since. So that's 20 years or 19 years, something like that now.
Right.
And then made it through first year, but not very well. Lots of drama, lots of, just trying to cope with my moods, changing all the time, and being away from home for the first time, and trying to study and everything. It all came to a head. I broke my leg. I fell out of a window display and I broke my leg, and had to go home because I was living in a student house. I'd moved into my second year house, and I had to go home to be looked after. And my parents, my dad and stepmom, kind of could see how bad it had got in that year that I'd been away from home. And so then I went off to the Priory, and I had 12 weeks in the Priory, which was an experience. I wasn't happy to be there. I didn't think there was a problem. I was still very angry about it. And so I didn't make the most of being there. I was in for 12 weeks over Christmas, and harking back to what my sixth form head said, I came out the day before my 21st birthday. So
Wow.
He almost got it spot on. I've never told him. I've never hunted him down to tell him. And then I was a bit lost, and I didn't really know what to do. And I kind of floated through life a bit, and things were really chaotic. And my stepbrother is a psychiatrist, and he started talking to the whole family were really worried about me and talking about me behind my back, which sounds awful, but it's what families do, right? Yep. And he started talking about the idea of borderline personality disorder or bipolar. And I remember he printed some stuff off and gave it to my stepmom, and she kind of highlighted the bits that she thought were applying to me. So we had this discussion, and I was very anti the whole idea, but agreed to go and see a psychiatrist, and eventually was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder initially. And then that was changed to a bipolar diagnosis about 11 years ago. So I'm on antidepressants, I'm on mood stabilizers as well. And that really hurt when I was diagnosed, because at the time, everybody, like my dad didn't really understand bipolar, and his idea of bipolar was sort of what's portrayed in the media, and that when I'm high, I'm going to be running down the street stark naked and doing all this stuff. And then when I'm low, I'm, you know, it's not that extreme, but the highs are not that extreme, but the lows for me are pretty crushing. And I'm lucky enough that I'm quite open about it. I always say that I have bipolar. It's something I have rather than who I am. But I'm really lucky that I've got a lot of friends. My best friends are all doctors, which helps.
Yeah, useful. Yep.
So it helps that they kind of understand. But I was thinking about this the other day. It's that thing of feeling like a burden. That's the thing I've struggled with most over the years, is feeling like a burden. And I've cut myself off from people and not gone to events if I'm not feeling happy, or just if somebody, I always used to say, if somebody asked how I was, I'd always say I'm fine, because I didn't want to be a burden. And it's taken a long time to get over that and realise that, yes, there are those moments where I'm really low and I need support. But there are also those moments where I'm doing okay and I can support other people. It's a two-way street.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been rocky. It's been rocky, and it still is. You know, you and I were talking about a couple of weeks ago, I had to have a whole week off work because I couldn't function. I was stood in Sainsbury's sobbing because I didn't know what squash to buy.
Right. Yeah.
It's that kind of, it just knocks you on your ass out of nowhere. Yeah.
Wow, it's fascinating, and you know, thank you for sharing. And I know you share that, and you talk about your experiences with others, and this is why these conversations are so important, is recognizing that, you know, you work well, you're a hard-working person, you're very capable, you've got all these things going, and you do have this, you know, this diagnosis of a serious, you know, it is a serious mental illness, right, or mental challenge, right, and it's so but it's being conscious of that. And I think that's so admirable for anybody, you know, to when we have the opportunity to say, you know what, this is me, this is what's going on, this is how I react, or these things happen, you know, it's so critical. So, you know, a couple of weeks ago you did have a week off. Can you tell a little bit about why that happened? When did you get to that point of going, I need to take this time?
It was the Friday night, and we were supposed to be having a Zoom with some friends, and I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. And I went to bed really early, and I woke up on Saturday and I was in floods of tears, just sobbing, like, you know, that kind of just racking sobs into my pillow. And I was like, something is not right here. And I just couldn't function. I couldn't concentrate. I wasn't sleeping properly. I didn't want to eat anything. My head got into that circle of, everyone would be so much better off if I wasn't here, and I'm such a burden, and I have to go into work because they simply can't cope without me, and I'm a letdown if I don't go into work. But also, they'd be better off if I wasn't here as well, because I'm really unreliable, and da, 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 da. And it was that kind of, I call it the terrorist chatter that goes on in your head.
Right.
And I was subjected to that all week. And I used to just deal with it myself. I never used to tell anybody. And I'd go to work and I'd kind of stare at my computer and pretend to be working, which is no good for anybody. So actually, you know, it's taken time, taken courage as well. But actually, I emailed my boss and said, I can't do this week. I'm really sorry to let you down. I just can't function. And then he was great. You know, he was great, because it's that honesty, isn't it? It's that, like, I would if I could, but all I'm capable of is lying in bed, staring at the wall, and just trying to ride out the storm. And that's how it really feels. It feels like a storm. And then eventually the dark clouds start to shift a little bit. And my friends know when the dark cloud starts to shift a little bit, because I will WhatsApp them, and, you know, and I'll start to come back to life. It feels like I'm almost blossoming again. But then, of course, with the bipolar, I have to be really careful, because when I've been really low, I can sometimes go the other way and be really high afterwards. Yeah. And that's kind of tricky to maintain that balance and try and be a bit stable with it. But I'm really lucky, having worked somewhere for so long and being open about it. You know, I told work as soon as I was diagnosed. There are people at work that know me better than I know myself. So they can tell if I'm starting to get manic, and will come over and say, is everything okay? Do you need to take a moment? Just, you know, have a little moment. So, and that wouldn't have happened if I wasn't open about it. you know, it was really scary to do. It was really scary to do. My manager at the time was a very straight-laced northern man who doesn't, you know, kind of, you look at him and you just think he doesn't hold much truck with mental health.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, just pull your bootstraps up and get on with it. And I remember going in and saying, I couldn't come in yesterday because all I could do was stare at the wall and think about how I was going to kill myself. And he was sort of like, oh, okay, how do you feel today? And I said, well, I feel a little bit like I've taken a cheese grater to my skin because I feel so raw and exposed from talking about it. But the more you talk about it, the more that feeling goes away. It's almost like you build up the emotional scar tissue over these wounds, and it just becomes something that you talk about.
And you know, you're absolutely right. The having that conversation, that first conversation, sometimes it takes courage. It takes a lot of energy as well to get yourself into that mindset of, I'm going to share this with somebody. And I, you know, through the work that I do with Samaritans as a listening volunteer, the work that I do in mental health, of course, you know, I'm very privileged to hear people talk often for the first time about things that they've never told anybody. And I just want everybody to realize that, you know, as you've said it, as I've said it in my experiences when I talk openly about where I've been, you know, it's okay to talk about it. And we have to tolerate that and understand that and learn.
And I also think everybody's on their own timeline.
100%, yeah.
Back to when my mum died and I started having counselling, I then did a counselling qualification myself.
Okay, cool.
I wanted to be a counsellor.
Yeah.
Realised I like telling people what to do too much.
Yeah, difficult one.
It's only this year that I've started having therapy.
Right, okay.
Because I had to come around to the idea. I had to get to that point of, okay, I've kind of processed it. I know I have this thing that I deal with, but there's so much that I've just kind of survived through that's gone on in the past that actually now is time to talk about it. And I call it brain school. And I talk to my friends quite openly about what happened at brain school, because I'm learning more about myself and how I relate to the world and how I cope with things and things that have happened to me in the past that other people haven't been through or other people have been through, but everybody deals with things differently. So it's kind of just relearning a little bit about who I am, knowing that I have bipolar and I react to things in a different way to other people.
Yep. And how are you finding that journey and that experience with the therapy?
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible, really. And it's funny because I find that during the week when I'm driving, if I'm, when driving to work normally, think about what I want to talk about. And I kind of run through scenarios in my head of what I'm going to talk about.
Yep.
And then I sit in the chair and what I talk about is something completely different that comes out of nowhere.
Yep.
And I go in there and I think, I've got nothing to talk about this week. And then we have a massive breakthrough out of nowhere. So it's been the best thing I've done for myself. And I would recommend anybody, I would recommend it to anybody to have therapy. A friend actually texted me the other day and she said, I'm so proud of you over the years and the way you've changed, but particularly this year, she's seen such a shift in who I am and how I deal with things. And that's down to kind of unpacking it, really, isn't it?
Yep.
So.
Wow. And great advert for therapy and for hopefully, lots of people thinking about there are options, right?
Yeah, I actually heard something on social media last night and I was thinking about it and it's just perfect.
Yep.
It was a guy that said you have to remember that even superheroes don't work alone. And I was like, oh yeah, it really hit me. And I was like, it's completely true. This superhero who can save the world still needs help and support.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of one that might say that he doesn't need any help, but I can't. Most of them are combined into like Avengers or Marvel.
When I first thought about Batman and Robin, and
Yeah, true. But somebody has to. I guess somebody has to look after things for them, right? You've got. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I've never thought about it that way, but it's interesting, And the thing that I find fascinating for me is, when I train people, I always say that I'm not training you to never have challenges. I'm not training you to never have, to be susceptible to illnesses, because I can't. You can't train that into somebody. If you, unfortunately, life events, triggers, traumas, accidents, incidents, and all the wonderful things that come with life will happen. All we can do is be mindful of the impact it has on us, And when things start to go a little bit awry, or things start to feel a bit more heavier or worrying or darker, is having the ability to say, you know what, I'm not great today, or I'm really am struggling, and you have an abundance of self-awareness. You know, that's evident.
Yeah, and when I'm really low now, my friends get so worried that now I'm at the stage where I can say, I can bring myself to message even when I'm at my lowest and say, I know you're worried, but I would tell you if you needed to be worried. You know, I know what I need to do.
Yeah.
And for me, it's go into my shell and ride it out and kind of just wait for it to pass. But we've got to that level of a relationship in talking about mental health, and friends have opened up to me about mental health issues, and it's a privilege to hear somebody tell you something like that.
Yeah.
It's really difficult because, of course, I wouldn't wish this on anybody. I wouldn't wish mental health problems on absolutely anybody, even my worst enemy. But it's so much more common than people think.
And that is the big reality, isn't it? It's that understanding and awareness that, look at the statistics, and no doubt the statistics are going to change, not for the better this year. They're going to get harder, and things like post-trauma and all those things will come out in longer term, and long COVID sort of issues relating to mental well-being as well. You know, look at lockdown, look at the restrictions, how that's impacted on different people. How have you found those? How have those restrictions impacted on your mental health, Alice?
It hasn't really been that different.
Okay.
Because I live on my own. A lot of friends have been really worried because I live on my own, but actually I feel more privileged than some because I know that my job is safe. I don't have children to try and homeschool or worry about. Yeah. My family are okay. They were looked after. You know, my dad and stepmom were looked after. They were safe. The rest of my family were okay. I just had to worry about me on a day-to-day basis. So it was like I could go to the shops. I live right by Southampton Water, so I was going out for walks every day. Yeah. I've got a friend who lives in the country park at the other end of the village, so we were going for walks. So other than being able to go out for lunch, Sunday lunch, or go to the movies or see friends at work, not that much changed for me. Obviously, I spent most of the first lockdown on Zoom, like the rest of the world. And towards the end of it, I started to get what my boss called the other day Zoom gloom. And you're just like, oh God, not another one. I love you dearly, but I just don't want to see your face on Zoom. But it also gave me a chance to really reflect about what I want to do and what I enjoy doing. And it kind of gave me a chance to, it sounds really trite, but it kind of gave me a chance to find myself a bit more again. And realize that my identity isn't just my work personality, if that makes sense. Because I've always struggled really badly with self-esteem and self-confidence. And, you know, I've taken some professional decisions this year off the back of realizing that I don't have to be in the industry, naming lights type person to feel good about myself. I can feel good about myself just because I log on every day and I do my job and I, you know, keep my travelers happy, and that I'm fine as I am, regardless of what I'm doing. So that's been a huge change that wouldn't have come about if it wasn't for lockdown. So
positive stuff. Yeah, very positive.
Yeah.
So what's your self-care routine? What do you do to make sure you maintain, as best as you can, of course, you know, your mental strength, well-being, positive thinking? What do you do for that?
Well, I've become completely obsessed with my Apple Watch.
Okay, other watches are available, just in case anybody...
Other watches are available, but I've become completely obsessed with making sure that I close the rings. So you have to stand for a certain number of minutes every day, and you have to do a certain number of active minutes every day. And I'm up to about 105 days in a row of closing them. Okay. So it's that going out for a walk and just getting some fresh air and making sure that I sleep properly. I don't sleep well. Okay. So I do go to bed really early just to try and get that sleep time in. But it's also talking to friends and just having that human contact as much as possible. My best friend really laughs because his wife and I spend all day voice noting each other on WhatsApp. And he says, well, why don't you pick up the phone? And it's like, well, we both work and you can kind of pick it up. I also read a lot. I've got like about 350 books in the flat. And I love to curl up with a book and with my cat, who is very much a lap cat, and just read and just be. And yeah, I quite like spending time on my own.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Friends, but yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Well, and again, it's just about knowing what you enjoy and making sure you do it. And I love the app thought, the Apple Watch thing. It's, it encourages you to keep going, doesn't it? And having a target or a routine or something that you can sort of use, but make sure you continue doing it. That's the key, isn't it? Because lots of people get into it and then give it up straight away because it's
even in that low week, I wasn't capable of going out for a walk, but I was capable of marching up and down on the spot in my flat and marching to try and close that ring, because I wanted to keep it up, and I genuinely think that helped shorten how long I was low for, because I was still trying to do those things. I was still trying to read. I could only read like 5 pages at a time before my brain just went, no, I can't do any more. So
but that's really fascinating. So you'll have to explain what closing the ring is, just for anybody that is unaware of what it is.
So there's 3 rings on an Apple Watch. One is you get a calorie target to burn, which I kind of ignore.
Yeah.
One is how many active minutes, so how many minutes your heart rate is up.
Okay.
And the goal for that is 30 minutes a day. And then one is how many hours a day you stand up.
Oh, okay.
For more than a minute per hour. And I just started it, and now I'm completely obsessed by it. But it's
amazing.
I said to someone the other day, she said, how are you doing? I said, yeah, life is good. And I haven't said that. I can't actually think the last time I said that.
Yeah.
That's
good to hear.
Given that we're in the middle of a global pandemic. But my little bit of the world, I'm doing the things I should be doing. I'm very aware that down the track, there might be black clouds coming. But the more I build into the foundations now, hopefully the easier it will be to ride it out when they do arrive.
Brilliant. And you can only live for today. It really is that reality now, isn't it? Of today is the important day in your life. Tomorrow, we don't.
What happens tomorrow is going to happen tomorrow. That's a future me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so Christmas, we did talk about that briefly before, because this is around Christmas, of course.
Yeah.
So what about your thoughts? There you go. There's a Christmas tree. I have some lights for anybody. This is for anybody that's watching, of course, because that would have meant nothing to anybody listening. What Alice just pointed to, a very small Christmas tree behind her, but it's a lovely Christmas tree. So how do you feel about Christmas this year?
This year is the first year since Mum died that I've been looking forward to Christmas, and I've made a concerted effort this year to try and flip the narrative on it, because it's, Mum died in 98. Like, in 22 years of miserable Christmases, and I've spent it with my brother and his wife and the 2 boys, and I love them utterly, and I'm not saying that I hate spending time with them. I just find it really difficult. I'd get into bed and cry, because I just held on to this idea of what Christmas should be like. And so this year is the first year I'm really excited about it, and you can tell that because I've spent way too much money on gifts for people and food to take to my brothers, and I found myself the other day voluntarily putting some Christmas music on Spotify playlist on shuffle, and the first song in my 23 years of not listening to Christmas music, the first song was called It's Not Christmas Until Someone Cries, which I thought was beautifully ironic.
It's a message, isn't it? It's a message.
I'm hoping that it's not going to be me this year, because that's the first in a very long time. So
that is lovely to hear. Yeah, and I wish you a wonderful Christmas, of course, with your family, and I know you'll be with your brother, and yeah, it's lovely to hear, though, that's how you feel about this current world that we're in, and it is half of the reason for this is positive mental health, as much as it is talking about the challenges you've been through, the experiences. It's okay, and it's perfectly good to talk about positives as well, and that's what we need to encourage more of, because that's what I try to help people understand, is talking about the positives helps us to understand when things are going wrong. Because it's when you stop doing those things that make your mental well-being good, then things can start to go in the wrong direction. So I love it. I love hearing what you've got, what you've got planned, where you're going, and the future.
I've got that fizzy excitement of wanting to finish work. It's like, why can't I next Monday at 3:00 when I
Yeah,
finish.
yeah, yeah.
And I've never had that.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Hold that.
And I probably will have the same doom and gloom at 7:00 in the morning on the 4th of January when I have to get back to work.
You know what? That'll be another year. We'll see where we are. You know,
tomorrow's problem.
Exactly, tomorrow's problem. So don't worry about tomorrow's problem. That'll be there tomorrow. It's like the emails. You know, as much as you want to finish them all, get them off the way, there's always going to be another one behind it.
There'll always be somebody.
Yeah, just remember that email's blocking the next one coming. That's all it's doing. Alice, we're at the end of it. I can't believe we've been in the for half an hour. It just feels like we've only just started, and there's so many things we can.
A bit of a whistle-stop tour of.
Oh my gosh, yeah. But you know what? I just want to say a huge thank you to you, because I love you to pieces. I think you're just an amazing human being. You really are. Oh, I'm not trying to, but if you want to, you're more than welcome to. It adds to the impact. But your story is so incredible, and it's such a ray of hope and encouragement for lots of people who, you know, I hate this thought that people suffer in silence. They live with these thoughts in their head. They don't have people to talk to. They don't have, you know, or they feel they don't have people to talk to, because I don't believe that people don't have them. So having that ability to be able to be open, honest, you know, totally transparent in who you are, and that realization of, you know, just I'm human first, and you know that's who we all are, is human first. You know, everything else is just gloss and material, isn't it? So you know, that for me is so important. So thank you. I'm going to pass to you for closing thoughts, like bit Jerry Springer style, you know.
Oh God, it is
Alice's final thought. And then I will just close briefly. Just one thing I need to say.
Pressure. I feel so much pressure. No, I mean, thank you for having me on. I sometimes feel that it's nice to have a new platform to talk about mental health, because I sometimes feel like I bore my friends to tears talking about mental health.
And they're all going to listen to this, of course.
And that I try and drag them along and kind of make them more aware of their mental health, and force them to. So it's just nice to have a platform to talk about it, and just make people realise that you can be okay, even when you're not okay. You know, you can talk about it, and people will be receptive, and there are platforms out there, and there are lots of wonderful people out there that you can talk to. If you haven't got anybody that you know, there's the Samaritans, there's all sorts of different places you can go for support. But the more you talk about it, the easier it becomes. You've just got to take that first step, and remember that superheroes don't work alone. Everyone needs a sidekick. Well,
Alex, you're my sidekick, or I'm your sidekick, Alice. You know, we got this covered, right? We've got.
Means I get a cape, right?
100%. I don't want to wear I don't want to wear lycra though. Nobody needs
no lycra, but a cape I can do.
Nobody. I don't want a Batman outfit where it looks like he's got like pecs and abs and stuff.
Alice, that's a mental image.
Really has. As Alice says, for anybody that is listening, that is struggling, might need some extra help, there are always organisations out there that are available to talk to. Samaritans is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. 116 123. It's free to call. Please know that if you're worried about something, you can call. It's not about feeling at the end that there's no alternatives. Just reach out if you need somebody to talk to and to listen. And that's it. We're done. Alice, it's been amazing. For anybody that's listening, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. And I want to wish you a Merry Christmas, Alice, a wonderful Christmas time. You too. And we'll catch up in the new year.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Matt.